Well, now, the issue around whether prisoners should be able to vote is just one example of how decisions made in Europe can be important for us here. Sarah's been weighing up just how much power Europe has in the way Britain is run.
If we were outside the European Union, then obviously all British laws would be made here in the UK. At the moment, some estimates suggest 84% of laws in member states originate from the EU. But then other estimates put it at more like 6%. It's very difficult to know. If we were to leave, then obviously we would choose whether or not to keep rules like the Working Time Directive. But what about the controversial Human Rights Act? It's worth remembering that actually originates from the European Convention on Human Rights, which has nothing to do with the European Union and would be completely unaffected by any decision to leave.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined again by P.Y. Jabot, by Katinka Barish and by Dominic Raab, MP, who was one of the Conservatives' 2010 intake, and Emma Reynolds. She's Labour's Shadow Minister for Europe. Dominic Raab, do you see the European Court, for example, raising precisely the same hackles as the completely separate European Union? In other words, just as unattractive to many people as the EU is? And do you see people wanting to get out of both?
Well, I think they're different beasts, and I certainly don't want to withdraw from the European Convention. But what you've had in this case is very interesting. There's no right to prisoner voting in the Convention. It is something that the Strasbourg judges have tacked on. And that's a power grab. That's not what judges should be doing. They should be interpreting the law, not creating the law. And even the president of our Supreme Court, Lord Neuberger, said ultimately Parliament must make the law when we have rulings like this. So actually, I think it's right that elected lawmakers make these decisions in the last analysis, and I'm pretty sure they'll reject giving prisoners the vote.
Emma Reynolds, would you agree with that?
We, the Labour Party, want to maintain the status quo. We maintained it while we were in government, that there is a blanket ban on prisoners voting. However, what was extraordinary today from the government, the Justice Secretary was before the House for about an hour of giving a statement and taking questions. But he didn't tell the House how the government will recommend to its own MPs how to vote, which option, to keep the status quo or to give some prisoners the vote. And he has also refused to publish the legal advice, and I think we need those pieces of information.
But what I've found in talking to a lot of people about Europe, particularly here on the station even, is that the issue of who makes the law is rather one of those cardinal deciders. Many people think the EU make the law. Of course, it is a totally separate system, the European Court. But does Europe perhaps interfere too much in English and Scottish law?
Obviously, there's a big difference between the European Court of Human Rights, which is in Strasbourg, and the European Union institutions, most of whom reside in Brussels. I think that the benefits that we derive from being members of the European Union outweigh the costs, and I think that it would be extremely bad for British business and people's livelihoods and jobs across the UK if we were to withdraw.
Well, let's look more again then at the European Union.